Hi, Dr. Rob.
Good evening, Tammy. Nice to see you.
It's always great to see you.
And I am seeing you. I see you.
I know. And last week you were up in a very cold and snowy location. You were doing a presentation to the
I
Aquasasha
was.
Mohawk Council, and there was a lovely picture of you with some of the council members on the e-newsletter. So if you haven't already signed up for the e-newsletter, I would invite you to do so. But anyway, so he's now back in California where he's not dealing with snow. So
No snow. And I have to say something about you, Tammy. I was working. So anyway, my name is Dr. Rob Weiss, and I am a longtime psychotherapist and expert in addiction and sexology, human sexuality, intimacy, and those kinds of things. And I've been doing this work a long time. And I volunteer here once a week on our volunteer website, as other therapists and friends do, to run this particular support group. And this one is a very simple one. It's because the person who answers all the questions, which is not always the case, but in this case, it's an FAQ, and you guys ask questions, and I answer them to the best of my ability. And my just request of all of you who are listening, in case we haven't chatted before, is, I don't know you, I don't know your marriage, your relationship, so I say things that feel right to me, maybe in relationship to the kinds of things you're saying. It doesn't mean that it's absolutely applicable to your relationship. For that, you need your own therapist or someone in your life to support you with some objectivity. In any case, thanks, Tammy, for joining me. What was I going to tell you? Oh, I'm just glad to be here.
there you go. So the first question, how can I determine if the use of pornography in my life is an addiction or just normal use?
Well, I think this is a great question for anyone who is questioning any kind of addiction. How can I tell if my going to the casino, going into the online casinos and gambling is a problem? How can I tell if gaming is a problem? How can I tell if alcohol is a problem? The wonderful thing about being in the addiction field is that we have a lot of things in common. And one of the things we really have in common, no matter what the type of addiction is that you have, is the kinds of symptoms that we demonstrate. And those are almost exclusively, we become obsessed with whatever it is. So if it's porn, it's really driving my life. Like, I make plans with friends, but I cancel them, or I don't make plans with friends, or I stay up later than I should. I'm more interested in the porn and my engagement with the porn than I am. It becomes an increasing priority over other things that in my heart of hearts, I know would be better for me to do, but I'm just watching this porn now. And that might include going on dates, building relationships, being intimate with real people, stuff like that. Another sign of addiction, any addiction, is that it's creating some problems in your life. It's someone commented on it, someone stopped going out with you, you lost a job, people aren't calling you or reaching out to you very much lately, and you can see the consequences. And despite that, when it comes time to look at the porn, you're looking at the porn because that is the priority, not necessarily the friends, the relationships, and the outside world. The last point is that you're having consequences, this is not going well, parts of it are really interfering with your life, but you keep doing it anyway. And the more you do it, the more problems it creates, and then you kind of do it more because that's your go-to for getting out of problems, is disappear into sex and porn. So really, I will make it very simple. We define addiction not by how much, not how much porn you look at or how often you masturbate. We don't define it by what kind, like if you look at this kind of porn, you're an addict, or if you look at that kind, you're not. What addiction is really defined by is the functionality of your life. That's my
Hi,
dog.
Dozer.
He's not barking at you. Really, addiction is defined by functionality. How functional is your life? Is whatever you're doing, porn, gaming, drinking, whatever, is it interfering with the core functions of your life, driving your life forward in a positive way? And if it is, once in a while people get drunk and they miss a day at work, or they get loaded, or once in a while somebody might cheat. That's a very different scenario than a repeated activity over and over and over again that is causing problems, you can see is stunting your own growth, and you keep doing it anyway. That's how we look at addiction. And Tammy, feel free to add to that.
Well, the stunting your own growth, or keeping you from activities and people and interactions that would otherwise be something that you would enjoy. So, it just depends. Like, I 100% agree with what Dr. Rob said. It's not about how much, it's about how it's affecting you. Okay, next question. Is it fair to say that the behavior or a substance that generates the first dopamine hit in our formative years is what we become addicted to later in life?
Mm.
As a sex addict, this has been my experience, and it makes sense since I'm not addicted to any other forms of addictive behavior.
So let me say this. This might be a good way of saying it. Children only have so many sources of feeling better when they are in pain. And if a child is growing up, whatever reason, feeling pain, it is not uncommon at all for them to touch their genitals. Children masturbate. 2-year-olds masturbate. 3-year-olds masturbate. They rub themselves over in the bed. They find ways to make themselves feel better. Now, you may not remember what it was like to be 3, 4, or 5 years old and what you used to comfort yourself. But for many a sex addict, that early act of literally using or actually using the sexual, touching your genitals, or going into lots of fantasy around intensity and excitement, or even sex if that was going on around you as a child, or porn, those become kind of go-to ways. It's not the first dopamine hit. It's what are you using it for? You know, I enjoy dopamine hits all day. I see friends, I have a good meal. I just was thinking about Thanksgiving, and that gave me a dopamine hit, you know. So we have them all the time. And when you're little, they're hopefully things like, oh, you know, I got a new toy, or I'm going for a bike ride with my dad, or whatever that is. Dopamine is important on a consistent basis for us to feel good about anything. It's not about that. It's more about, do I turn to pleasure and distraction every time I'm upset, every time I'm stressed, every time I have some free time? Do I turn to that intensity-based, not just calling a friend or taking a hot bath, but that intensity-based dopamine hit, the porn, the masturbation, the affair, whatever it is, on a consistent basis? That's really what it's more about, if that's helpful.
It is helpful. Thank you. So the next one, my partner, like many addicts, travels for work. One thing I am struggling with is that he is rationalizing and justifying his behaviors because most of his coworkers' friends engage in similar behaviors of acting
Oh,
out.
do they?
You know, escorts, flirting with waitresses, drugs, alcohol, strip clubs, etc. He also has childhood friends who do the same thing, and it appears they engage in this behavior together and frequently talk inappropriately about their acting out as well. I have assured him that this is not all men, and these relationships are toxic. Is this sex addiction still, if it seems at times to be a group thing, are they all just addicts? Is it fair and reasonable boundary to ask that they cut out these friends from their lives? That's a lot, but yes.
It's really very simple. So I'm going to pose this to you, because I have to change my lighting.
Yeah.
So, but also I want to respond in my own way, but I want to start with you. If someone said to you, you know, I don't, you know, I use drugs and alcohol because all my friends get high, and it's like no fun to hang out without getting, and then they look at me funny, and, you know, it's like, and then when I go to work, a lot of people smoke dope or whatever they do. And so I don't understand, do I have to cut these people out of my life, or what would you say are on drugs and alcohol?
Well, I know exactly what happened to me. Is those weren't the people I was hanging out with initially. Those were the people, with all due respect to addicts, I slid down to. So I found people that had the same kind of behavior that I did, because that normalized it. Then I could say, well, everybody around me is doing the exact same thing that I am doing, so I don't have a problem. I have traveled a lot for work. And, you know, I didn't go to strip clubs. I don't drink and drug anymore. So I didn't flirt with waitresses or male wait staff, you know, so no, just because now I have lots of people that I go to 12-step meetings with that have talked about being traveling, have been on the road, and they loved that because, again, they were engaging with behavior. Their clients were all drinking lunches and stuff like that. So I think we as addicts, and I'm speaking for myself, find people who are like us, and that normalizes everything. I wouldn't have wanted to hang out with somebody who wasn't drinking, because gosh, that would really have reflected the lens back on, you know, there would have been a big spotlight on how different I am than them. So yeah, to me, it feels like justification.
And I want to say this is about maturity. You know, forget addiction. You know, you say, is this just common for sex addicts? No, this is common for young men in their mid-20s to early 40s who have a free ride on the road and have expense accounts and don't have to respond to their spouses and just do whatever the F they want. But that's not a mature bunch of men that your husband has a lot to learn from. It's more like hanging out with, in fact, he is, in fact, hanging out with a bunch of high school friends in the same way. And I wouldn't be surprised if the people who party in town and go to strip clubs where you live are people he went to high school with. So how about this? Why don't we turn this around on your husband a little bit? How about, as a therapist, I'm going to say it like a therapist, isn't it interesting? That's a good way to say something as a therapist. Isn't it interesting that your husband has chosen to spend all of his recreational time with immature men who would rather drink and look at booty than be a part of their families or connected to people they love or even out doing healthy things? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with occasionally going out to the bar and having some booty, unless you're all a bunch of married guys and you're in your 30s and you have kids at home, in which case that's just a bunch of BS. So I would think carefully about your willingness to accept any of this bullshit. Your husband is trying desperately to pull the wall over your eyes and say, no, no, it's all right because everybody uses heroin in this neighborhood. It is not all right. And you know what? Even if everybody in his life was like this, you are supposed to be the most important person in his life. He can change jobs. He can change, but marriage is marriage. So why would he continue this behavior if he knew it upset you, if he knew it took you away from each other? Why is he defending this rather than paying attention to your feelings and what's going on with you? And I think that is as meaningful as the fact that he's running around like a 17-year-old. But on any shape, way, or planet, it would not be okay with me as a partner. And it wouldn't be about being controlling or demanding. It's like, I think it's very reasonable to expect the person you love, when they have some free time, are connecting with you, connecting with loved ones, connecting with family, growing, learning, or having fun, but not like having sex with other people. I just would not be okay with that. And I don't care how fun the friends are. And you know what? One more thing. A lot of people, many, many more than I could ever mention, have had to give up really fun, really great relationships, friendships, places they lived, careers, because they wanted to stay sober. And more than anything, they wanted to be there for their kids. They wanted to be there for their spouse. They understood what life was about, and they realized that they were throwing it away. And so they made a decision to move on from all of that. But it is a decision to grow up on every level. And every time your husband says to you, oh, it's no big deal, it is a big deal because he's not listening to you, and you should be a big deal.
Great answer.
Thank you.
Okay. I recently discovered my partner's porn and sex addiction coupled with alcohol and cocaine use. He also admitted to previously having a gambling problem. I am concerned if he does not get treatment for all of these addictions, he will just replace sex with something else. He already has admitted to increasing his alcohol use as a result of trying to refrain from acting out. My concern is that if it appears his acting out has escalated and on the fence with sexually offending, it's possible to treat all of these addictions in the same time. What is the best strategy for recovery?
I'm just going to tell you that I run a treatment center called Seeking Integrity, and you can find us at seekingintegrity.com. And this is exactly the kind of case that I wanted to address in running this program, and I'll explain why. I have worked in treatment programs, created treatment programs for addicts for many, many years all over the world. And what I have found is that drug addiction programs, almost to a one, talk about drugs and alcohol, but they don't really know or understand or have the sophistication to ask about other things. Now, if somebody is combining sex and drugs, or when they put down the sex, they're picking up drugs, or when they put down the drugs, they're picking up, food or spending, this is a person who has an emotional problem that is driving all of this behavior. And it's like whack-a-mole. You're going to put one down and you can end up, and this is exactly what treatment is for. So the reason that I was particularly interested in creating this program that we're running right now is because I see a lot of people with drug problems also have sexual issues, and they relapse over them and they struggle with them, and nobody ever talks to them about the sex. They only talk to them about the drugs when they get treatment, and so they only deal with half of their problem. And having a problem with intimacy and sex and relationships, that's a big half. The other thing, just to say it, is that this is what treatment is for, meaning that I don't think everybody needs to run and go to treatment because, just because you found out that he or she is doing this or that and they got discovered and there's a crisis, and, that's what you go to a therapist for. That's what you go to some 12-step meetings for. That's what you start on your path of recovery, around the crisis of discovery and the meaning that it brings and the crisis that it brings. But if I was an addict, or if I'm working with an addict who's in a family crisis around discovery, and they're working hard and going to meetings and they've been to some therapy and they're getting better, and or even if they're struggling and might add some more things like more groups or more, there are a lot of things I can do in the world as a therapist to help somebody get well. But when they run into, I put this down and then I start doing that, and or I get into rage or distancing, or there's more going on. And it doesn't make sense for someone to get drug treatment and then get sex treatment and then it just isn't necessary. But believe it or not, that's sort of what goes on out there. So number one, I would drop us a note, write Tammy, and I really mean that. It will be time and money well spent. But if not us, write Tammy also, Tammy at seekingintegrity.com, because we know some really good people who do probably some workshops or work in your area. It may just be someone needs to really get his attention. In ways, in fact, to both of you spouses who've just spoken, maybe the person you're involved with is not really listening to the pain that you're in because they find it too easy to push away. Sometimes you have to go to a higher level of getting their attention, but don't blame yourself ever.
And I want to share the challenge with treating things one thing at a time is they're not really getting part of it is stripping it away. So you actually have to deal with the emotional things, all the issues that are so uncomfortable that we keep escaping. And if you can keep slipping off to something else, you never get to the root of the problem. So it is the whack-a-mole that Dr. Rob was talking about. Mm-hmm. And it's so painful, for the addict, but really for the partners as well. It's like, but from an addict standpoint, it's like, I should be able to, how can I get this? So going to an individual therapist, doing some of the things that Dr. Rob was talking about, sure. Can you get from here to there? Yes. Could it take a year and a half or 2 years? Probably. The nice thing about coming to a treatment program is you get through all that, I call it the yucky stuff, kind of quickly, and you get a plan to move forward in a different way. I would. That's my technical term because I'm not a clinician, the yucky stuff. So it really helps, it helps get up on it. I was fortunate to be able to go to treatment, a longer time ago. And, I really thought I was going to be able to continue to do some of my acting out behaviors because they weren't that bad, of course. They were recreational. So, but I really came to understand that was not the case, but they also helped me get through that shame that I know for sure I would have relapsed when I got out, because if I didn't deal with that, so sorry.
Do you want to get that?
I may have to in a moment. So yeah. So if I didn't deal with all of that, I would have continued to relapse and probably wouldn't have lived. And particularly I'm concerned because it's the cocaine. People die from cocaine. People die from alcohol abuse. So
they
so
also,
a lot of,
they also get arrested. They also lose their jobs. They also get in the papers. But let me just say something else.
And I'm going to go take this call in a moment. So
that's fine. If you gave me the same scenario, but it didn't involve whack-a-mole, he was just really struggling to kind of get it in sex addiction, I would say go to a workshop, send him to a workshop for a couple of days. We do some, the Meadows does some, lots of places do workshops. And for people who are kind of like, I think I understand my problem, but I'm not really sure. But the reason that wouldn't work for you, and the reason I would recommend more than that, is because of the multiple issues, because it's this and then it's that. And to me, that's really a strong sign that there's a piece of this man's container missing. He can't quite contain what's going on inside of him, so he's forever looking for that escape in one form or another. And that's not his fault, although, he has to take responsibility for it. Tammy is answering. Hi, Tammy.
No, I'm back.
Oh, you're okay.
I told them I would call them in 40 minutes. So, okay. So the next one, is it possible to co-parent with an active addict who thinks he has no problem, still married but divorcing soon? He is shamelessly putting himself out there in an affair website and still claims to be super dad.
Okay, so I'm just going to dip into the real world and get out of addiction altogether and answer that question. I have a couple of family members, very close ones, who are getting a divorce, and they're in their, I don't know, mid-40s. And even though they're in the middle of I know that the husband was dating within 3 weeks of finding out that they weren't going to stay together. I mean, he was off to the races. So I don't expect that people, especially addicts, but I don't expect regular people who are angry and want to find somebody now. And I think it's typical. And by the way, men, often would prefer to go from one relationship to another rather than spend that time alone, because we really don't like being alone a whole lot, except those of us who do. But those of us who are into relationships, we would rather go from one to another, and that's why people have an affair and leave one relationship for another. Whereas women aren't as like, they might be more likely to end something before they, anyway. But my point to you is that what he's doing is just typical of being, it doesn't have anything to do with addiction. And besides, it's his life and you're not with him. So he gets to do whatever he wants. And if he wants to see prostitutes and have affairs and pick up women at every occasion, that's fine, as long as when he's with your children, he's focused on them and those other people aren't around. Because as far as the court's concerned and everybody else, he just needs to show up for those kids, spend time with them, be focused on them. What he does with his personal life is up to him. And I think you have to go with that.
Yeah, and I was thinking from a co-parenting, it's and having good boundaries. So like knowing, what works for you, and this is my boundary of like it's his life, but I'm here with the children, these hours, I have this much influence on them. But yes, divorce is messy and painful, but I agree. He
can do what he wants.
Yeah, you can't control them. So, okay. My husband is currently in treatment at our facility. I'm curious as to what my role in this treatment will be. Also, am I supposed to police his behavior, or is he solely responsible for his own behavior? So you should have received an email with information on what to expect, and then you'll receive contact. Yeah, you'll receive contact from our clinical staff. But I think it's fair would you answer am I supposed to police his behaviors? Because I think that's really a good question for everyone. So.
Okay, well, anybody who's in treatment, that becomes our job to police their behavior. So that's not to say if you run into some data at home, like something you saw on a computer or on a cell phone, that we wouldn't love to bring that into treatment and make it useful by presenting it. But once your partner is with us, it's really our job to be the heavy in a way. And it's interesting and really good that you're here and asked this question, because I want to say what our rule is about and you guys may not like this, about how you guys speak to each other while someone's in treatment. And you will be speaking to each other. We have, I think, a 72-hour hold just to give you guys some space. And then but we talk to you right away. Oh, by the way, anybody who comes in, you're going to have your own person who's going to be talking to you, engaging with you. If you're a spouse, it's not like we don't talk to you for 2 weeks. We'll talk to you a couple of times a week. But and any good treatment program should have a spousal person who's reaching out and regularly engaging you, and hopefully throwing you into one of our groups and giving you support, all of that. You're not the one in treatment, but let's face it, you're not the one who's been acting out. And while you do need a lot of support and help dealing with your hurt and your anger and your rage and your disappointment, it's not the same. You don't need help stopping a behavior. And that's why sometimes partners say, well, how come I don't go to treatment for 4 weeks? Because you're not as troubled as the person you're involved with. And they really need us in that way. And we kind of bring you back in a way when they're stable and sane enough to say, oh yeah, that's, I guess, what I was doing. I didn't really see that before. So I think, your role is to talk to the therapist and to make sure that your voice is heard in treatment. One of the things we do in treatment is we ask spouses to write a letter to us and to their husband, because we see men, or man, whatever he is. We ask spouses to say, this is what it's been like to live with you during this time. And we want a page or two from you, not 5, but a page or 2. And we read that and work on that with a client. And I've got to tell you, bringing your voice, the spouse, into treatment when you're thousands of miles away or hundreds of miles away or whatever, is really, really powerful and really, really useful, because they reconnect with their feelings about you, especially when you're not around. And that's maybe another reason I would say to not be provocative. I think that your job right now, if somebody's in treatment, is, and I use this phrase, I'm going to ask Tammy to type it into the thing. This is what I tell the patients. This is what I would tell you guys: news, weather, and sports. Yes, I do want to at least to type that, Tammy. News,
I am.
Sports, I know. And what I mean by that is, we're dealing with really challenging things all day. And a lot of times, let's look at it from both perspectives. Okay, one of our clients has been working on all this stuff all day. You've been home with work, kids, family, whatever you're doing, and you get a phone call, hi, how are you doing? And he tells you all this stuff about sex and his childhood, and he vomits all over you, or he calls you and says, oh my God, I didn't realize what I've done to you, and I'm so sorry. But you're in the middle of doing laundry and trying to pack for the next day, and that really doesn't work for you or for him. On the other hand, you're having a lot of feelings during the day and you're thinking about being in treatment and you want to get some things answered when you get on the phone with him and you get those few minutes in the evening to chat. And really that is only a time for you guys to connect. And how was your day? How are the kids? News, weather, and sports. How's it going at home? What's going on? Do you need anything? How are you doing in treatment? I'm feeling good. I'm feeling bad, but nothing serious, because if you guys have serious things to talk about, we want to be a part of it. We want to be in on those sessions. So what we don't want you guys to do is erupt into anger and drama in the evenings when treatment is over and somebody, so your job, I think, is to be wherever you are and engaging with him in a warm or cool way without a whole lot of drama and a whole lot of content, because that will come out of the work you do, not necessarily out of those evening chats. And no, you should never, ever become your husband's parole or police officer. He should and can assign that to other people, like a sponsor, but not you. You're his spouse. That's your job.
Okay, the next question. If you are a spouse who is not staying with her sex-addicted partner, I get that disclosure is not recommended. However, how does someone in this situation get closure? There was so much gaslighting and so many lies, it is hard to get grounded. I keep finding more things and he no longer lives with me. It's like an ongoing staggered disclosure. I still have children and myself to take care of. So how do I get healthy, grounded, and regain my truth? How does a person get healthy without understanding how they were victimized?
Well, I kind of wish I had a dialogue with this person, because I would like her, or I assume her, to write me what she needs to understand about being victimized. What is it that you want to know? If you write me right here and now and you ask me the questions that you want your spouse to answer, I'll answer them for you.
You can put it in the chat to all panelists, and Dr. Rob will get that.
What I'm saying to you is that, and I will do it, believe me, but what I'm saying to you is that if I gave you the detailed answers to every question you have, then you'd be like, okay, now I'm moving on with life. Thank you. Or would you still be tortured because you're in grief and sadness and pain about the loss of an important relationship that will take a very long time to get over, even if you had every right to not be there and he was a shit? You are still going to be in pain and struggle for a while. What I believe is happening is this is a part of your grief. If you had all these answers, then somehow you'd be able to move on from the pain, the uncertainty. No, you're going to be in pain and uncertainty no matter how many answers you get for a while. You've just lost your future, your plans, your spouse, your truth. And besides, why would you ever think, by the way, that if you're still finding pieces and there's been so much gaslighting, why would you think he'd be honest with you now? I just don't see any path for you going down this direction. I think your job is to reacquaint yourself with your life, with what makes you happy, to understand and take time to grieve. If you want to grieve, don't look for answers. Pick up a picture of your wedding and look at how much hope and promise there was there and where things ended up. That's what you might be looking at, is what you've lost, but not pecking for like crumbs in what's left of what used to be your marriage. There's nothing there for you there, except more pain. And that's why I said I could answer every question for you, and I would, but I don't think it would move you to any different place. You're just going to have to be here until it's time for you to move on.
So, and one of the things I thought, because I have been through a divorce a long time ago, and and I had the kids, and it was one of those where I wouldn't trade any of them, even all the terrible moments, because of the kids. So that was it was worth all the other stuff. So that was the kind of like the guiding light for me to get through all that. So, and if you haven't already joined the drop-in groups, there's betrayed partner drop-in groups. I would so encourage you to join those, and get support from other betrayed partners. Just because you're divorced doesn't mean you have gotten rid of all the garbage. So, that's other people who have experienced betrayal, have been gaslighted, all of those things. So I'd encourage you to do that. So, okay. Next question. Go ahead.
I just wrote a word in the chat, and just to support what you said, Tammy, which is, first of all, I just want all of you spouses to know that I really do recommend that you go to some kind of group or get some kind of support. And I want you to understand why. It's not because there's anything wrong with you or that there was ever anything wrong with you. you have been living in a situation that involves being a victim of really shitty behavior for a while. And you were fooled, and you had the wool pulled over your eyes, and you were told that gray was blue and blue was red and yellow. And, you know, it takes, and now everything's coming out perhaps, and you have a good darn right to be angry. This is a time when you need to vent and get support and get perspective. I was just talking to a therapist today. Tammy, you know who it was because you set up the call for me. I was talking to a therapist who wanted my advice. And one of the things he was saying to me was that he was having such difficulty working with the spouses he was a male therapist. He worked with sex addicts. And he found that so many of the spouses were so angry for such a long time, and they were not really able to resolve their issues. First of all, I asked him how long. He said 6 months. And I said, that's not long enough. So we had that talk. But the other thing I asked him is, I said, as a therapist, are you putting these spouses together with each other? And he said, no, I'd never thought of that. And I said, well, you have to understand what a gift that is. If you are a spouse thinking I'm not enough, or I should have done this, you know, why did I marry him? What was I, you know, you're probably, as a part of this, trying to rebuild trust, grieving, you're doubting yourself. It's just natural. And to be in a room full of other women who have also been betrayed and see that other woman your age who's also attractive and intelligent and say, wait, if that happened to her, maybe, you know, you begin to get what this is about. It's really not about you. But I've seen a lot of people turn themselves inside out, wanting the answer to why he didn't love me, why it didn't work out, why he went with this, what, and that's really not the right question. So anyway, I just hope you hear my support. I'm not trying to validate any addict hiding things or keeping secrets. I just think that your happiness is not going to be found in the path that you're on.
So what are some of the best ways to rebuild trust between a couple who is trying to heal from the aftermath of 23 years of dealing with one spouse who has been having a string of affairs but is working hard and in serious recovery? That's great.
Tammy, is that, yes. You have to let that person know about your old lady's posse.
I will tell them right now. So this was their choice of names. I didn't name it.
We didn't name it.
I always caveat with that. They wanted Old Lady Posse, and that one is tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time. And that's a support place for women who are of a certain age and have been in a relationship for a longer time. Probably don't have young children at home, but are wanted the support of other partners and the accountability. They wanted, this one has a little different tone to it, where they were willing to put themselves out there and be accountable. So I really love that. But there are other betrayed partner groups as well, which I mentioned a moment ago. The other thing I was thinking of is the couples workshop. It's such a great place to really gain some tools and get a foundation of that. So I will put some information in the chat about that, but you have another thought, Dr. Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I think trust, I have this like, I see it like an equation, and I'm not a math guy. I'm
a math person.
You are a math, thank you for being a math person, but I'm not. But I see, whenever anyone asks, how can I rebuild trust? I see an equation. And what I see is consistent behavior and honesty. That's one line, consistent behavior and honesty. And then underneath on the bottom, what is the denominator is the bottom?
The numerator and denominator, yeah.
Which is which?
The denominator is underneath.
Okay, so the numerator is consistent behavior and honesty. And it's all over time, because it's not anything he says, it's not anything he does, it's not anything you do together. It's going to be consistent actions and honest words over time. And it can be a while. And the more you realize, oh, he is telling the truth. Oh, that did happen. Oh, you start to get reassured. And this is a time where I think it's really on the addict to be extra supportive. And I don't mean pouring on I really don't mean pouring on oh, I love you, I'm sorry, I never meant, not that. I mean, showing up in time for dinner, helping out with stuff, being available, planning the vacation instead of leaving it to you. This is when someone really needs to show up as a partner, because what you should be looking for on some level is, do I really want to be with this person after all I've been through? And here is their chance to really not just be on good behavior, that's not it, but to learn what it takes to really be a contributing member of the family that he's in with you. And he may or may not even want to show up for that. And this is a great time to know that. So I think this is not a time where you can expect him to be the perfect person who will never hurt you again and absolutely tell the truth over, but look at the long game here. He needs some arc for learning how to be more honest, more truthful, more attentive, more kind. But this is really a time he should be stepping up for that.
Yeah, and what good information. But he is working hard and in serious recovery. That's really awesome. So many of the people, that are coming here, don't have that. So there's a lot on which to build hope. In the chat, I put that equation. So that's in there. I also put the couples workshop, but I also put, Dr. Rob wrote a book called Out of the Doghouse, which is a great trust building. It's like, dude, do these things, and so it's a very good primer on rebuilding trust. So, okay. I was very angry. This is the next question. I was very angry as a young child, preschool and onward. I have thought about it and I can't identify why and where the anger came from. I distinctly remember my first orgasm at 4 or 5 years old. Why? Why does early anger and masturbation have to do with addiction?
I don't know that childhood memories always come together in a way that can make sense to us. Things that come before 5 or 6 are really kind of a kaleidoscope. They're not lined up in the kind of memory that we have as adults. It's a part of our brain that doesn't really experience or remember things in the same way. So what I would not say is how do these things relate to each other? I would just say, like, it's interesting that I was an angry child, that it's interesting I remember my first orgasm, or I remember my early sexual experiences. I certainly don't remember anything before, I don't know, probably 9 or 10 or something. So, well, that's not true. I can remember 7, I think. But I think that these are therapy issues. This is a great thing to sit down with a really good professional and say, I can't put all the pieces together, but I can feel a little of this and I know a little of that. And you may not get to every single thing that happened or the meaning of it, but my true belief is if we do really good therapy or really good treatment, all of us carry the shadow of what has happened to us in how we live today and how we act today. I'm only able to get as close to my spouse as maybe I got to my parents, and I don't know how to get closer because I never learned. So that's the shadow. We can grow past it, but it's still trailing us. So the more you can learn about yourself through who you are today and how you're living your life today and what your relationships are about today, and then take that look back in therapy to what this stuff is about, with somebody good, you'll make those connections. And I don't know what it's about because it's very personal and it's inside of you.
So I'm going to read a quick comment. So I saw your clip on the doctors. It annoyed me that your opinion was sidelined, literally. That's your opinion. So.
Well, I thank you. So I do media fairly often when issues come up, and right now the issue of porn addiction is very much going on. And there was a piece on CNN about porn addiction, and then the doctor's show called me and asked if I would come on, and their real stance was, this isn't a real thing, this is kind of a joke, but we'll invite somebody who kind of knows some things that they say about it. And I got them actually in our conversations about that show all the way to, we're going to see you as a legitimate professional, and we're going to listen to that side. And so I thought actually that, considering where they started, you have to understand, I get email and letters from the media all the time. Oh, we're doing some show about how sex addiction doesn't exist and it's a big joke, and we just thought we'd have someone who thinks it does. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, we have a diagnosis for sex addiction in 90% of the world. It's just the United States and Canada that don't have that diagnosis. So I'm not going to debate these issues with you. I already know they exist. They're just not distinctively called out yet in the United States, but we'll get there. We're just a little behind. Yes, it is a good fight, that's for sure.
So the next question, what I call a codependent dilemma. My narcissistic spouse works 6 days a week because he abandons everyone or they leave. He is all alone. I am suffering because of his behavior, but I find it difficult to completely cut him off because I also go full no contact. Nobody will support him and try to make him aware of his illness. What would the codependent model say, or is this off topic?
Well, what I think codependence would say is that you love him. And so you don't want to see him alone. And you can imagine what it would be like for him to be alone with his problems, and you're still connected to him in a way that has meaning to you. And you can feel some of that pain that he might experience, and you've seen him in it. So, and you still care enough to not want that to happen. I don't think that, so you're still in a place for whatever reason of I'm still focused on him and he's meaningful to me, and I am willing to put part of myself aside to focus on him because that's important to me. And we would have called it codependency, like, oh, what's wrong with her that she's still hanging around him, he's such a loser. But that's not real. And what is inside of her that's broken, that leaves her still wanting to be with him, that's all codependency thinking. My thinking around codependency is you still care. Maybe you're a deeply loving person and you don't give up on people easily. Maybe he's the father of your children. Maybe, maybe. But I think for you to go after yourself because you still care about someone who's troubled, I don't know, I'd call you a hero. And I think that's how codependents would look at it. Now, one more thing. If you yourself would like to move away from him and your feelings about him, then I think that involves grieving and putting some closure on it in a way that you don't have. But that doesn't mean you have to work through codependency. It just means you have to grieve the loss of the relationship, which you have not fully done because you're still attached to him. Clearly, you care. By the way, folks, the opposite of love is not rage, is not anger. The opposite of love is indifference. You just don't care. That's the opposite of love.
I agree. Okay, so here's a question. Hi, doctor. I can't seem to explicitly ask for help or even a hug from my support groups, CODA, SAA, because I feel like asking for a hug is not really genuine because they don't want to feel bad by rejecting me. So if they don't initiate, then it's not genuine, but an act of charity. Why can't I get over if they cared, they would initiate hugs, calls, texts, etc.?
Because there's something wrong with you. And I mean that in the most loving way. Like, this is a problem, and it's your problem. Your need to have someone see you first and not be the one who calls attention to your needs it's not healthy. That's an unhealthy thing. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I need some attention. What's going on? And, oh, you don't have time? Okay, I'll go ask you. And that's what it is to be an adult human being. Don't you understand that every baby cries out? That's how we learn about who people attending to, like my dog, right?
I was going to say, there's Joe's are crying out.
That?
Yes.
He's calling out to me to attend to him. I would not know that he needed to be fed if he didn't call out, and mothers would not know to take care of their children necessarily in the moment that they needed taking care of if the baby didn't cry. So this is part of being a living, breathing being. Your unwillingness or inability to allow yourself to be simply human with real needs is your issue, and one that you need to work on, because you will forever be lonely, questioning whether people want to hang out with you or not. And here's a little tip, and I mean this with all due respect. If people aren't interested in hanging out with you, they will be polite and they will go away. If people don't want to hug you, they will put out their hand. Not everybody is exhibiting warmth and friendliness because that's who they are. They might actually say something they like about you, as hard as that might be to see it. This is your narcissism, your obsession with not being so great. That's one kind of narcissism, but kind of not being worthy. No matter what other people say or do, I'm not worthy. And that's only having your worldview of it, not letting other people in. And that is your issue. And work on it, because it's not about the world that isn't available to love you. It's about your doubting that they care.
And one of the things I thought of was, how often are you reaching out to someone to show that you care about them? Are you texting and say, you were having a difficult day yesterday, just wanted to check on you. Somebody shares that they need a ride to a meeting, and you pitch in. So rather than it always being about, oh, they need to see me and do whatever, it's like, how can I see them, and how can I step into that? That's how I create a relationship. Is it's the give and take. It isn't all they need to see me. They need to anticipate my needs before I even verbalize them. That doesn't work. So go ahead.
And I want to take it just down to basic, what it is to be a child, what it is to be an animal, what it is to be anyone who asks, if no one knows, they don't pay attention, and they might say hi or stop by, but you're just, you know, humans are competing, and we're all looking for a little bit of the pie, and you know there's enough to go around, but you have to be willing to stand up and ask for your part.
And I'm going to still say, and give too. So,
And give.
yeah, I feel better about, like the more I'm giving, you know, like it makes me feel good about being, you know, on the planet. So, okay, next question. I'm a female, a woman in SLAA recovery. I'd like some advice on how to support a fellow sex addict who is young, in her 20s, and addicted to porn and masturbation. Do you think a porn addicted women have a different path of recovery than men?
Well, I don't think that anyone has any different path of recovery when it comes to the basics, which is, you know, does a female alcoholic need to do anything really differently in the beginning than a man? No, they both need to stop drinking. And so this is a behavioral issue. He has a behavior. He looks at, or she has a behavior. She looks at porn. She needs to stop that behavior. It's no different than if she was drinking or using or gambling, or it doesn't matter. And so your job as someone who's supporting her is to support her into stopping. Whether that means she has to call you every time she gets online, and or she needs to maybe put a tracker software on her computer so that whenever she's on there, you get the information about where she's been. But I would say it's the same as any kind of addiction work. You have to provide her with accountability. You have to give her some structure, and you have to give her direction. And then you get to see how committed she is. But she's got to put the porn down. Like, that is just the beginning. Nothing else happens before that.
So the next comment is a comment. I would like to validate the comment made earlier. Trying to move on in life without disclosure is cruel. We have the right to know. We should not be penalized this way for leaving an abusive situation.
I wish that it were different. I wish that the people you had been with were more honest, more open. I wish that you had not been left in the pain you're in. And I did never said that you don't deserve to have the truth. What I said was, I don't think that the truth in this case will set anyone free. To know, you already know he was a big asshole. To know how big an asshole he was is only going to leave you feeling like more of a fool. And so it's almost really better to move on. But do you deserve, you deserve for none of this to happen, you know? And so I'm not saying that it wouldn't feel better in the short term to have that information, but it really isn't the long-term answer to anything, not if you're not staying together.
So next question, how do you know, all caps, when an addict is being truthful? My husband is a master manipulator. His affairs and prostitutes happen during work time and business trips. I believed him for years. He had a secret bank account, private plane trips, separate phones, etc., etc. He is a great father and generous with me. He was only outed by accident.
Well, I mean, I don't even know where to start there, because it really is up to the individual. I mean, I've worked with people who got that that they had this whole like false, well, let me back up. I think because I've had the privilege of working in residential treatment, and we really get to keep people around and move them quickly, that I have really gotten to see some people move in treatment from, I don't know what's the big deal is about the porn or whatever they're doing, to, oh my God, I've presented this false self to the world. I don't even know who I am because I've been so busy trying to be this for this person and that for that person. And so one of the things that you might ask your husband is, how well does he know himself? How well has he learned about what's true and not? What does he see for himself in all the lies that he's, I mean, I think that because, you know, I don't know, I have seen people move very quickly, especially in treatment, and go to, I get what I need to drop and I'm going to drop it, and I can identify it. And I also see people where this stuff you're talking about, the manipulation, the lying, is such a part of who they are. It's not just something they picked up for picking up women or drinking. It's something that they are. It's more of a part of their personality. Everyone is a master narcissist manipulator when they are an active addict, because all we care about is what we want, and we're going to do whatever we can to get it. And it's that thing that we're addicted to. But the question is, you know, what kind of man is he, and what does he know about himself, and who is he when he's not doing all of that? Would he be someone who would never want to, I mean, in my sobriety, I don't want to lie. I'll just tell you a story. Can I tell them a story, Tim?
Please do.
Okay. So
you've got time.
Not that long. Well, it's a long time ago, probably 15, well, time goes fast, 20 years ago. I was in Hawaii on vacation, and I was probably 10 years into recovery. And I noticed that each room in this hotel in Hawaii had really plush bathrobes. They were thick, like I just thought they were really nice bathrobes. And so I made a plan during my course of being at the Hawaiian vacation place, how to steal one of these bathrobes and take it back to my house. And I'm sure I'm not the first guest to do that, because they have a little sign that says, please don't take these bathrobes or we'll charge them. There are 2 in each room. So I read that. So when I went down to the spa and they gave me a bathrobe, I was like, aha. So I had the bathrobe on, and that was the one I left in the room. And then there were 3 in the room, so I could take one of the new ones and put it in my suitcase. And that's what I did. And I was getting ready to leave, and I thought, and this is absolutely true. And I thought, something's not right here. What's not right? I didn't know what it was. It was a feeling. And I thought, wait, something I shouldn't be doing. And I was, oh yeah, I'm stealing something. And then I thought, well, what's the big deal? It's just a bathrobe. And then I remembered that I have this program that I have to work, this whole way of living that I've had to adopt, not because I particularly want to live that way, but because if I don't, I know I'm going to go down a road that's really bad for me. So I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to have no problem stealing this bathrobe, and it's going to get all the way back to my house at home. And then I'm going to sit there thinking, darn, that just cost me $17, because now I got to put that in a box with an apology note and send it back to the hotel. Because my recovery does not necessarily dictate that I'm not going to make mistakes, but it does say when I become aware of them that I need to own them. And therefore I thought, why make the mistake in the first place? And so I just didn't take the bathrobe. And here's the best part of the story, the part that Tammy will like. I don't wear bathrobes. I don't even like bathrobes. It was just a really nice bathrobe, and I determined a way I could get it. Now, Tammy, am I just a sociopath, or do you relate to this kind of thinking at all?
The whole circle of like having to think it through and go, am I going to do I want to make an amends for this? Like that has stopped me from saying something or doing something, because I go, I just don't want to make an amends. So I'd rather not have to, like, I just don't want to go there. So one of the things I wanted to point out too, because you said he's a really great father, and Dr. Rob has shared this on previous webinars too. You can't be a great father if you're hurting their mother. And so while you can have the lip service and actions of being a great dad, you're doing things that are hurting the children by hurting their mother too. So I just wanted to give you the framework for that. So last question, we're going to get all of them tonight. Thanks, doctor, for the validation. I am trying to escape for 3 years and working on myself, but he keeps contacting me after 1 year and 8 months, and I see him broken. Please repeat the last advice you gave.
Well, I'm not, since everyone is anonymous and we've answered lots of questions, I'm not sure which person this is. But I will say, it's when you love someone, sometimes you have to let them go in ways that aren't entirely comfortable. And, you know, while you feel maybe, I don't know, however it makes you feel for this ex to contact you, maybe it makes you feel warm or like, oh, needed or special, or maybe he cares still. The reality is he may only contact you so that you can fill him up and make him feel better. And then he can go back out and do whatever he wants to do. And you don't matter to him at all anymore. And I don't mean to be cruel or mean. I'm just saying, like, the role that you're playing by even taking his calls, what is the point in that? He has lots of people he can call. And so, you know, if it were me and it had been a year or more, or getting on those, I said, please don't call me when this is happening. Please don't, which you may have not have done. So let me go back a second. If you let him keep calling you like this, you're prolonging your grief, because you are still wanting to, in some way, and this isn't codependency, you had a role with him. It was friend and partner and support. And that part of grieving is losing the role. It's not just losing the person, it's losing, I was a father, I was a son, I was a, you know, and so you have lost that role with him. And when he calls, like, oh, you get a little bit of that role back. You're the confidant, the friend. Unfortunately, I don't think that, it doesn't sound like it's real good for you. And I don't know if that's really helpful for him. And what you might consider doing is blocking his number, or writing him a note and saying, please don't call me under these circumstances. And then if he can't respect it, but it is you who are continuing your grief by continuing to allow yourself to be in this role. And again, I know as Tammy hears me talk to partners, she's thinking, yeah, that's right. Codependency doesn't make any sense. That's what's going on. Because it's so easy to blame you. You see, under codependency, I could say, well, you're just a really broken woman who can't get over your needfulness. I mean, there's so many ways to make someone feel bad about just still loving someone a little bit and not quite being over it. And that's such a much more reasonable way to think about things. And I think it makes more sense.
Well,
And
and you say, I see him broken. So, that's hard when you see somebody you cared about and you see they're broken, and for some of us, we want to help and fix. And so, so that, and that can make us feel good too. But, yeah, it's challenging. And I agree with Dr. Rob, but, if it's prolonging because you said, I'm working on myself. And so I have a feeling this chips away at that, every time,
right.
we interact. So
One more thought for you. Write a goodbye letter and, bring it to your therapy. Write a goodbye letter and then maybe pretend that he's with you and have him write back through you. And then you can look at what you think he would say to your goodbye. There are many, many ways that you can start. Make lists of where this relationship has meaning for you, where it doesn't, what you'd like to continue to get from it, what you wouldn't, start to put this into a more concrete form. Because I often find that being able to begin to get over things makes more sense to our thinking brain than it does to our emotional brain. So, Tammy, thank you so much. And
thank you.
you give so much to these people. And I'm not around when you're answering their calls and you're sending emails, and I don't even live in the same state. So I just want to thank you for all
I'm
that
going
you
to see you later this week, though. In
We are.
person. Yeah.
We're throwing a party. We're going to throw a
Yeah.
little treatment center
Yeah.
party.
So,
So
yeah.
anyway, good to see you.
Thanks,
Thank you, folks.
everybody.
If you, I will say one more thing. There is a podcast. It's called Sex, Love, and Addiction. It just made a top 17 podcast in the United States under sexuality. I just got a notice today. So we're doing good. If you're interested in the podcast, it's a good way to stay sober, listening to me rattle on about recovery with a whole bunch of people who are really understand addiction, recovery, relationships, attachment, intimacy. I have some great guests. So
yes, and it's on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. I just put the link on there, and you can click on all of the podcasts in any format.
I want to tell you guys something. In case you think, oh, well, they just do this for us. We actually do this for therapists too. Tomorrow morning, Tammy and I will be doing the same thing, answering questions for therapists, trying to help guide them and support them into doing better work. And they like that. They get a lot out of it too.
They're doing really good. So yeah, it's good stuff. So thank
Bye,
you
Tammy.
all. Thanks for the great questions.
Good night, folks.
Bye.